Well, that's kind of what you should expect with AI writing. To be honest, when you write by what the people want, you're going to get a large kind of emotional reaction versus what the people in charge want. I don't think that's a way to make a film. I don't think that's the way to write a book. You should have one vision for it, and it should be your vision. So.
Hello and welcome to CultureScape, the show that interviews the geek creators and influencers that build nerd culture. So you want to be an author? What now? As many of you may be aware, the landscape of writing and authorship in 2023 is vastly different from where it was even 10 years ago. With Amazon self-publishing, GoFundMes, Patreons, and Kickstarters, from the mindset that authors should be read and not heard, to today's Goodreads and Twitter book communities, we have come a long way from the days of Robert Heinlein or Isaac Asimov publishing stories in small sci-fi magazines, which now must close entry due to ChatGPT. To help us learn what it takes to be an author in 2023, today's guest is prolific author C.S. Johnson, a conservative Christian stay-at-home mom with over 40 books to her name. She has entries in science fiction and young adult novels to fantasy stories, an anthology about pies, and now a comics book project, which just launched today. Very exciting. Johnson, I think, is one of those unique people that might help us answer today's question and help the audience and myself get what it takes to be an author right now.
Well,
hey, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on, CS.
Oh, call me CJ, please.
That confuses me though, because it goes from CS to CJ. You're still using
I know
initials.
I know. Well, that's my job as a woman, I think, first and foremost. And then as a writer, I got to maintain some level of like making sure that you know your place. For years, though, I will say people have called me CS, and I'm like, that sounds so weird to me because I'm used to mommy or wife. Get over here. So CJ is like, it just rolls off the tongue a little bit better.
Okay. CJ. Well, congrats on your new comics project.
Thank you.
What's it called and where can people find it? I think it's
I have it launching. Yes, it's launching on Kickstarter today, and it's called Dizchord, and it's Atlanta's guardian angel of music. So it combines all my favorite things and all my secret wishes. So I live in Atlanta, or like near Atlanta, and I think New York has too many superheroes, and they don't need another one. So I decided to write Atlanta's own superhero for it. So I really should get it trademarked.
well, Marvel and what Stan Lee, I think, I don't know if it was genius or lazy. It's just like, we'll just put them all in one city. We will even make up a fictionalist and we'll just use New York. Just put all of them there.
I think that's part of the appeal of New York, though, is like half of it is a fictionalized city.
Okay, so tell us a little bit. How did you get into the world of books? You have over 40 titles to your name. You told me before we start recording, you've lost count how many titles you've worked on. That's kind of crazy to me. I struggle really bad with writer's block, and to think there's people out there that have 40 plus books published, it just makes me feel so ashamed.
Well, if it helps you write more, yes, feel ashamed. I'm joking though. Don't do that. I started writing 10 years ago. I think that helps. So I started publishing 10 years ago. So I think that helps. I started writing long before that. That helps a lot too. If you start 20 years ago, you're right on target. Yeah.
So you started writing though, right when a lot of this self-publishing revolution was getting going.
Yep. Oh yeah. I remember taking my first manuscript to a literary agent and like begging for help. And now today, like you can get a lot of like free tips on the internet from YouTube to Twitter to anywhere pretty much. There's a lot of online courses on different platforms that'll teach you how to kind of work your way into the publishing industry in various aspects.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a weird kind of transition, because that is the old school publishing route that they had. And then this is the era of the new gatekeepers, where there are no real gatekeepers. So you kind of have to find your audience and then prove your worth.
There are plus and minuses though to this new system. Like, entry technically is easier, but it seems like, at least this is kind of how it is for me being an independent journalist. It's like you have to kind of know how to do everything. You might have to do everything. Is it that kind of how it is for you?
It started off that way a lot of the time. I would write my own stuff, and then I would try to, what I tried to do after that is I would find an editor, I would find a book cover artist, I would try to find help with publishing. Like in marketing is my weakness. I made the joke earlier that like they told me the best way to market your book is to write book 2. And I have to go back and learn other first steps, I think, at this point. So just because at some point it's like, hey, especially if you switch genres like I do all the time, hey, you should actually go back and like try to promote this like in a more standardized kind of way, or a less write the next book sort of way. So
no, I think people who can bring that go-to energy and really work on projects and see them to completion, it's real impressive. And I think at first there was an association a lot with self-publishing as being of lower quality, because there's just more of them, so it's harder to sift through to find the good stuff. But I think social media has brought to a point now where that fight is a lot easier than it was. I think also the success, and I talked about this my last episode with Dr. Robert Hampton. We had I'm trying to think, what is the name of the movie? The Martian, which is an excellent book. That was a self-published book entirely. I mean, at no point was the publisher there. It was only after the whole thing was published that others came back to him and say, hey, we want to make some money on this. So it astounds me that how much the book world has changed.
Well, we have a lot more competition now too. Because of like the global village kind of closing in, there's a lot more availability for like translators. So I know a lot of manga fans are excited about that. And then you have the Korean serials. You have a lot more culture coming in from other places. And then you have, of course, TV and streaming and the movies and, pretty much regular everyday life too.
Yeah, no, it's the plus and the negative of the attention economy. You're not just competing with people in your own industry, you're competing with everyone and everything else.
Yes. I tell people it's like sticking your head in the ocean and trying to scream.
Yeah, no, that's kind of how it is for me too. But authorship, I think it's not the sinking Titanic the way journalism is, I think, because there's still interest in reading books. And the difference between journalism and writing books is generally people, when you write a book, they are interested not just in the topic, but the author. Whereas in my industry, people could really care less who the journalist actually is. So it's a little bit different system, but there is some relation there.
Well, the truth, like journalism is the main job of journalism is to present the truth, right? That will always change as facts change in certain circumstances. I mean, like with fiction, it's more of like, let's see what I can make up today. So I don't think that they're quite in the same boat, but I do think that there are problems that because of technology and because things can come faster, like I remember waiting for the 4th Harry Potter book to drop, and it was like 4 years, and I'm like, where's book 4? Whereas like I know some authors, they can spit them out pretty quick these days, and they do. Like if I had any personal shortcoming myself, is just I don't write fast enough for my own enjoyment. So
well, Brandon Sanderson, who I talked to a ghostwriter last year in in an episode of the show, and he talked about that many of these big authors, these big names that really that they're just a collaborative team effort, and they just kind of use the author's name as like the pen name, basically. But that isn't always true. I think I've heard rumors of it, but there's no proof. Like Brandon Sanderson, who all of a sudden announces he has a GoFundMe of like 3 finished novels that no one knew about. just crazy because they're like thick too. They're like full 1,000+ page books.
Oh yeah.
Crazy. I don't know. I just do not know how people like you or him do this. It just astounds me.
Well, like I said, I've got 10 years. 10 years. My starting point was 10 years ago for me, and I tell people I started writing in lieu of therapy, and I was lucky enough that I'm talented enough that it worked for the most part. And I've gotten better over the years too. I read some of my older stuff, and I'm like, I would correct this, this, and this, and this. But see, the story still's good. It's the execution, I think, is probably the worst part.
Okay, so here, I want to do this with you, and forgive me if I create some competition, but
That's okay.
walk me through the step. How do you go to starting a project to completing it? How did you go from when you very first started? Like any old schmo, they see this, they say, I want to be a self-published author. How did they go about doing it, making it happen, and the steps?
All right. So the first thing I would say is write the book. Especially when you're starting out. Like it took me about 7 years to finish the first book in my first book. Okay. And it went through at least 3 or 4 rewrites. I know a lot of authors. One of my best friends, she told me that it took her like 15 years and 20 rewrites of her first book. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right, So write out your book as much as you can, and don't worry about mistakes. Don't worry about repeating words or phrases or anything like that. A lot of people who want to write a book have an underlying reason for wanting to write the book. Obviously people wouldn't know it, but I'm actually very extrovert, or I'm not very extroverted. I'm very introverted. And part of the reason I like to write is because I can get my full thought across without being interrupted. And there's so much that I'm still very introverted. So obviously there's a lot that, like, if you ask me about one particular thing, I could probably go on 20 more pages, and I just had to cut out some of that for, style. So write out your book and then find a good developmental editor. I actually know several that I can recommend if you want me to give you links for underneath the description later.
Oh, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, that might be nice to include.
Yeah. And then part of it too is like, part of it that I can't really help you with at sometimes is like according to genre. Like I write a lot of I would term them as young adult to new adult books, just because I like blending genres. I don't like sticking to the formula. Like there's usually they call it the right to market formula. Like if you want a science fiction book, for example, like The Martian, like one of the defining aspects of the genre is that you usually go into a lot of the technical side of things. I know, like, that's actually one of the reasons that people really liked The Martian as a book versus the movie, is that it went into like the intricate details and talking about some of the more complicated inventions that he had to work with while he was on Mars. Whereas in the movie, you kind of got like the quicker kind of expository sort of journal entry delivery, and it didn't really highlight those things like it did in the book. But I kind of skip over that part, and it's like, hey, there's a giant starship and circling the world, and it's full of, space pirates.
Yeah, no, I would struggle with that too. I'm not the most, I don't have really an engineering mind. I don't think I'd be the right person to write something like The Martian.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's even a specific way that some people take, like memoirs. Like I know Joanna Penn has she's writing a series right now about nature memoirs. It's, that's pretty cool in my book, because I'm a big fan of, William Wordsworth and, other sort of things. No, wait, no, Walt Whitman, the other WW guy. And, so that's kind of interesting, but I don't think I go out in nature a whole lot. I got the vampire skin, so.
Yeah, I have the same problem. I understand. As a fellow vampire, I understand your pain there.
Okay,
so
good.
how do you decide once you've gone through this process, then you have to publish the book, right? How do you choose your vendor, or how do you figure all that out?
Oh, well, again, a lot of it boils down to genre. So like if you have a particular genre that you're looking for, like like fantasy, and like in fantasy, I think it's Bane. Bane is pretty popular with the sci-fi fantasy crowd. You might want to approach somebody for that particular, like publishing with them, or you can publish it yourself. I publish under my own imprint, so I act as my own publisher, and I do this because I'm a bit of a control freak, and I enjoy being able to like offer discounts, or I don't like asking anybody if I can give a book out for free or anything. I like being able to say, yeah, sure, here you go, leave a review, please. Or here's the link, here you go, buy it here. So I think once you've decided if you want to go the traditional route or the like doing it yourself route, and there are some that are kind of like halfway in between this, you have those options as well.
Why would you choose to bring in a partner like Bain Books or like a small publisher versus self-publishing? Is it also a money thing? Because I'm assuming when you self-publish, you probably rake in a higher percentage of the potential profits.
That's it depends a lot of the time. With the traditional publishing, the best part of it is that you have a team behind you when it comes to marketing. You have that space that's reserved in like Barnes and Nobles and Dalton's and all these other, and Books a Million, all these other kind of like stone brick and mortar book places. As an indie, it's harder to get into those. There is limited space, so unless you're like local, not a lot of stores are like open to that and carrying that. And then sometimes it comes down to speciality once with your writing. Like a lot of my work has a lot of Christian themes in it, but it's too Christian for the atheists and not Christian enough for the Christians. I have the same problem with liberal and conservatism. So you might, like, Christian bookstores probably wouldn't carry my books, even if they are theologically sound or preferred in that manner.
Oh, that's too bad.
Their loss,
I haven't spent a lot of time in a Christian bookstore, to be perfectly honest, so I don't have a real good feel for that. the whatever genre it is, and they throw a Christian in front of that, those kind of books don't typically attract me. So
yeah, and that's because, like I said, you don't have the altar call at the end for a lot of my books. So
yes. My the one thing my mom loves, probably her favorite hobby is to read books. Her favorite are like Christian historical romances or Christian web romance. So it's a period piece, but at the end, the love interest finds Jesus, and then they get married, and that's usually how almost all of them end. And I mean, yep. It's not something that really would appeal to me or probably most of my audience, but for her, that's perfect. That's what she expects, what she wants. She's happy with it. I mean,
yeah, and I will say, like, I love literary fiction. So my background is in literary work. I started out as a poet. I love poetry. I love literary fiction. So it's harder stuff, and it doesn't always make sense, and it doesn't always resonate, with the right to market crowd. So your mom, by the sound of it, is a very right to market reader. So it's like, your reader expects this and this and this. You better give them this and this and this. I like to think that most of my work is an acquired taste and that there are surprises. But if you enjoy it, you'll enjoy most of my work. So
I know you do have an audience, because even before I met you and you were friends of the same Twitter chat group, I heard other people mention, when people are like, what are some current conservative fiction writers that are going on that are making room in that space, and your name came up. So I do know that some people are reading you. You do seem to be having an impact.
Well, I'll never underestimate the power of blackmail, right?
I guess that's one way to try to publish a book.
No, I'm kidding. So I don't have any blackmail. Stop sending the FBI after me. Yeah, I will say, like, in the other side of kind of like the coin you mentioned earlier too, is having a social media presence, and I'm just there. I I've tried to make it a point to get on social media if for no other reason than I don't want anybody going around pretending to be me. I don't think anybody's tried that, but I also want to be able to, I want to be able to say, look, I've been on here for 10 years. This is me. This other person isn't me.
Social media for promotion is a very mixed bag in my experience because it's hard to tell from one project to another what will get traction on social media. Sometimes it's easier to tell. It's like a very hot political topic or it's something very newsworthy in the sense of interest. But a lot of the time with social media, I think it's more about establishing like an era of legitimacy to your project. I also think it's about, even though you may not get to like a ton of people, you are going to get to the people that you do want to see it, especially if they're other professionals or people who do word of mouth. I think the idea people have of social media with book publishing or any of these things is like, it's like you've seen this in 100 Hallmark movies. Some kid puts up some video online, all of a sudden they're mega viral, and there's a studio that has to get them right now, and it just does not work like that in the least.
No, I will say like excellence is a habit. And I like to think most of my work, because I'm very critical of myself. So I like to think most of my work holds up to the good enough standard that I demand of myself. My perfectionism can be really crippling. And that's part of the reason why I said when you start out, just write your book. It doesn't matter if you have typos or mistakes or anything, just get it out. You will feel better. Just get it out. And it's kind of almost like, you can see what's wrong when the whole picture is there before you and laid out, and it's like, oh, I need a better second act, or I need something here that helps the character relationship develop better, and you can really only see it if you have the whole thing out.
I know a lot of writers, they've told me that before they felt like they were actually writing quality content, they went through like 1 or 2 books that were just utter garbage that they never published. And that kind of was like how they cut their teeth into becoming an author. Did you have any of that? Or did your experience working in poetry kind of prepare you to write in fiction?
Poetry is like the heavy lifting of literary fiction, because you need to get every word right a lot of the time. So I think it helped starting off with poetry. It is becoming a more like mainstream genre for people right now. So I anticipate we'll see a lot more popularity with some of it. Not a whole lot more, I think, because all the witchcraft stuff is gaining popularity. You see pretty much a large trend of these things coming as they head down the pipeline. We're done with superheroes. We want to do something else. Paranormal romance has been really strong over the years. I'm anticipating that you'll see more of that. And then like the things like The Witcher, I think that just dropped yesterday, season 3. And
unfortunately, yes.
Oh, unfortunately.
Well, I love Sapkowski's novels. I love the novels way long ago. I was in high school when I read them. They're fantastic books. I really, especially his first book, I feel like is more short stories, the anthologies, which are hard to actually get a hold of. Those are actually the strongest. And that is kind of what Netflix probably should have adapted, but they didn't really. They only kind of touched upon it, and they more want to do like the fantasy epic kind of stuff. And that's like I always thought that was the weakest element to the writer. So it doesn't surprise me at all that their current show is a mess, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, well, I know there's like a writer's strike going on in Hollywood or whatever right now. And I remember the one in 2008, because that was the year that they delayed Avatar, The Last Airbender's like 3rd season. And, and compared to like The Legend of Korra that came after, you can tell that there's been a real drop off in quality in terms of writing in general. And I think somebody told me yesterday that Alex Kurtzman was like a scab writer, and you can see Star Trek's demise.
I would believe that. Yes, I couldn't believe that.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, he's such a. I mean, he might be a terrific person in real life. I don't know, but he's just not a very good writer. His stories just don't hold up, and you can't even point to like a single one-off. They're like, oh, that was really strong. It's not like universally, all his Star Trek projects are just gosh awful. And the only reason he's had stuff picked up is because the other people are writing for him. Like on Strange New Worlds, now Picard season 3. Picard season 3 is like a whole new writing team. It's like
I heard
everyone
that
that
the
used
head
to be
writer
on it
was
got thrown
changed
out.
out. So yeah, the head writer was changed out on that, I think. So,
but it is weird though, the writing, because I think maybe this is partly because of self-publishing, but it feels like more than ever before, especially in the upper echelons of literature and entertainment, that kind of writing. It seems like there's a lot more people there that are just really there because of their connections or who they are. They haven't really built themselves on talent. We see this all the time in comic books. It's insane. Marvel is just stacked with people who have
yeah.
no comics or writing credits to their name whatsoever. And they're just like given like mainline team or major character comics. And then they're surprised when nothing sells.
I call them nepto hires. Like nepotism hires, or and I do think that the younger generation coming in, and I say this as a relatively young person, okay? I'm in my 30s, I'm relatively young. Like my generation is the last generation, I think, before the internet came about, and it's become easier and harder to relate to people. If that doesn't sound weird.
No, I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Continue.
So a lot of people writing today are writing based on the media that they grew up in. Now, I grew up in a time where I like you had a lot of you had a lot of the printing stuff was there. It was more readily available. Like you could go into a library and you could experience all these books and stuff. But I still come from an era where if you read something in the 90s versus if you read something today, you can see the vast difference almost immediately with whether it's a lot more stuff today is right to market. So you can pick out, oh, here's the first plot point. Here's the first fight. They're going to break up. This is where the big disaster happens. You can almost predict it. And the predictability has become a problem too, because that's how we get idiots like Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi trying to subvert yourself. And I like that's all I want to tell them. Just go subvert yourself, man. Stay on Star Wars.
I think the problem with Rian Johnson, he when he does his own thing, some of those movies are fine. I think part of the problem is, that this is the old rule that they taught in J school. Is like you can't start breaking the rules until you know why they were there. You have to understand the genre and why it moves the way it does before you try to then subvert it or change the arc of the plan. But he didn't seem really to understand that. It was like, if this wasn't Star Wars, if this was its own thing, this would be fine because it's Star Wars specifically, and Star Wars has certain rules, and you're breaking those rules not in a way that improves it, but kind of is detrimental to it. I think that was the problem.
Well, and if you look at most of his films too, like even the twists are done for like tension and for like the ratcheting up of the stakes and everything and stuff, but some of them just don't make sense. So they just don't make sense within the world building that he's presented, and that's probably the most irritating part on that. When people like talk to me about stories, I actually have a book if anybody's interested. And it's called Good Writing is Like Good Sex, and yes, that's the actual title. And it talks about what makes a good story. And a story is a sense-making device in a lot of ways. We have the parables of Jesus to explain things that we can't fully understand with pictures that we're familiar with. And then it is also an emotional journey that goes from one position to another to change. So it's an emotional journey that makes it's logically sound. So I think with a lot of the Star Wars, The Last Jedi stuff, a lot of it was built on emotional problems more than the logically sound, and like within the world building, the integrity of the world building was compromised. So especially in regards to Luke Skywalker, I know they call him Jake Skywalker. It's like, oh, that makes sense. So maybe there's a clone of Luke out there, and that was just it. So
the sequel trilogy and the decisions they made from that are just baffling.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what you should expect with AI writing. To be honest, when you write by what the people want, you're going to get a large kind of emotional reaction versus what the people in charge want. I don't think that's a way to make a film. I don't think that's the way to write a book. You should have one vision for it, and it should be your vision. So
I don't think we're quite to because it seems like the limitations of AI currently is that it can't take what is fundamentally a bad idea or a bad draft and all of a sudden it's really good, but it can help you sharpen the draft that you have or provide better writing advice. And I find it's useful there. But people want especially a lot of the people used to be crypto bros, they try to put these projects where they want to, there's another one like Auto Chat GPT where they just kind of want to put all these things on autopilot and expect it to, pop out something that's, masterpiece. And that doesn't, we're not there yet. Maybe that one day that'll happen, but currently that is not where we're at.
Well, as I understand it too, the AI is taught by prompters, and a lot of people today they don't have that life experience or insight into particular areas that will lend their prompting to good writing anyway. And that's probably like my biggest criticism of my generation of writers is like, you grew up on TV and you think you can write for TV. That's not how it works. It's a good starting point, same thing. Like you grew up on novels and you want to write your own. That's great, but you need to like read like the classics and understand how literature has evolved, at least like somewhat more than what you grew up on. I will say, like, I reread a book recently that I haven't read since high school, and I was like, why did I like this book?
I've had that experience. Yeah. Like what was wrong with my taste? Cause like you remember it being like, this was so good. And then you come back with adult eyes and you just feel embarrassed.
Well, I mean, like, what book was it? As Fahrenheit 451, actually. I loved
Really?
Fahrenheit. Yes, I loved Fahrenheit 451. I loved it all the way up until I was an adult. I reread it and I'm like, this pacing is awful. And this is so depressing.
It is depressing.
I think it hit me harder as an adult because like when they talks about like the seashells in the ears, I'm like, oh, that's how like I exercise with my AirPods in, and that's how like I'll clean the house listening to to podcasts or music or something, and I'm like, oh, I've turned into Mildred. and there are some, like, there's a point in the story where he Guy and Mildred are trying to read more complicated books, including the Bible. Like the book of Ecclesiastes is the book that he comes along. I find this very ironic. I still love that twist where it's like you have this book where it's like all of mankind is worthless and life is meaningless. And and he's the one that's stuck trying to memorize it for when they can get books back again. But they're trying to sit there and like read through the books again, and they're intellectually unable to do it. And I sit there and I squirm, I'm like, oh no.
Well, that's kind of, I think Ray Bradbury was a writer with a lot of different strengths, and they weren't always aligned. He's just kind of a weird writer that way. But one of the things he's really good is long-term trends. He's really good at predicting long-term trends because he could see simple innovations in his day, and he could take those thoughts and then play them out, 50, 100 years. And he was one of the best at that. And I think his predictions about, the demise of literary culture as his generation knew it, the rise of how TV would eventually bring, it would feed us introverts. It would disconnect people socially. It would change the way society functions. He got all that just dead right. So,
oh, he's an excellent satirist. I was surprised at how much I came away from Fahrenheit 451 thinking this is not as good as I thought it was.
Oh, that's how it is now with me and Ayn Rand. When I was younger, I thought she was like this incredible genius, and she's a better author than a lot of people give credit. People want to say she's a terrible author. It's not true, but she's definitely an author who will appeal more to you in your rebellious teenage, early 20s than mature adult.
I find her work very morally undermining, if that doesn't sound weird. Like throughout the, I assume you read Atlas Shrugged, right? Okay. That's usually the one people read. I thought she had some very good points about business and government and policies. But the fact that like at the center of the novel is Dagny Tabert, like having several affairs with several different men, it really creeps me out. And like trying to like put those on the same level playing field as like you should be allowed to X, Y, and Z. It's like that's not how marriage and relationships work. You can't treat them like a business, you know.
Yeah, Ayn Rand is an interesting character. She's very much a product of the environment she came out of, which was Romania right before communism took over, and she was very much objectivist in everything. She did. You can give her credit that at least she tried to live her life in accordance with her beliefs, as crazy as some of them were. I think one of the things that's interesting about you, CS, though, is that you're not just a political conservative. You're traditionally conservative. You are a believing Christian. You're a stay-at-home mom. Those aren't typically the descriptors that you would use for someone that is a science fiction author, someone that's trying to engage in the nerd culture world. How do you think that? How do you reckon with that? How does that compute with the work you're doing or the stuff that you're interested in? Do you think that brings a different perspective? Do you ever get pushback because of that? I think that's one of the interesting and unique things about you and your work in general.
Thank you. I'll wear that with straight shoulders and my nose jutted out. So I will start at the beginning of that. So I'm very traditionally conservative. I grew up in a very conservative home, and I'm able to say thank God for that. I know, and I think part of being a conservative is knowing who you are and where your worth comes from, and a lot of that comes from believing in God and you finding your identity in Christ first, and then understanding that your identity, as you know yourself, is like in psychology they call it the Johari's window, where you know these things about yourself, and then there are things that you don't know about yourself, and then there are things that like only other people know about you, and there's this whole window painted to discovering yourself. So I think a large part of figuring out that, you know, you're a child of God, that you are a sinner, that you live in a fallen world, that life will always be hard and it will not be fair and you will not agree with a lot of things. And at the end of the day, you know, you have a choice to believe that Jesus came and died for your sins and that guilt is taken away and that you can live a life that's more full of who you are and who you're meant to be in him. I think that's very anchoring. It's kept me from like a very far off side of crazy. I know a lot of people say that everything that I just said was crazier than anything they can think of. To which I will like show you like 3 or 4 different Twitter feeds, I guess. But along with the Bible believing church is that you have the church, you have your family, that they give you kind of an understanding of your role and the things about you that, you know, like I'm a middle child. My older sister is, you know, a bona fide genius, and she has she has her law degree and her business degree, and if you met us on the street, you would not believe we were related, you know. I'm the creative genius and she's the actual genius. And then my younger sister is very similar to my older sister. So I'm kind of like the black sheep of the family. But because of this, like I can relate to people who are like me and like them better. So part of my job is to explain things to people in a way that they can understand them. And that's how I became a teacher. And that's what my education is technically in. Teachers, of course, don't make a lot of money. And when I married my husband and he got a really nice job, I just stayed at home with the kids. And And I like being the trophy wife for what it's worth. And he's very supportive of my work. And I'm very blessed with that. And he is a very good husband. Like I weep for people who don't have a marriage like mine. I loved being married. I loved him. And we've been married for almost 15 years now, and we never get tired of each other's stupid jokes or the fact that like I'll leave my dishes out on the sink in the sink, and then he'll put his socks under the bed, and we have, and it's just we try to make each other laugh a lot, because even if we're angry about stuff, it's a way to diffuse a lot of it. So we have a long history. Yeah, I'm very much in love with my husband. And I think that helps kind of anchor that conservatism too, because when you're a beneficiary of what works, you don't go seeking something that will work partially to kind of fulfill that. I've had my years of teenage rebellion. I've had my years of college rebellion. I understand, I understand from not feeling like I was the genius that my parents wanted. That feminism can help women who feel disenfranchised, but too much will kill you. That's probably one of my favorite quotes on the internet is feminism is like Tylenol. A little bit might help you if you're in pain, but too much will kill you. And I know that the breakdown of the family, all the pressure on fathers to be financially stable, and all the pressure on mothers to be just to look good and to look really pretty and desirable. There's an insane amount, and of course the kids have to be perfect children too.
Or you just don't have any. That's how you solve that problem.
Or you could get a couple of corgis,
Dress them up in baby clothes. Yeah, no,
I've seen dog strollers, and I'm what is we're coming to?
I just read an article last night. There's this cafe in New York that they now added. You know how they might have a kids menu? They now have added a pet menu so that the people, their dogs, can eat while they're there. Part of me actually think that would be really fun to try out. But also it's kind of a little sad that is there a demand for that? What is that saying about people in society?
I think that there's a large push with feminism to turn men into, or to turn women into feminized men a lot of times, where you have to earn the money. And that's something that I struggle with too, with being a stay-at-home mom, is honey, what if I don't make my money back on my book? This is kind of a dark humor. Not a lot of people, and my husband's very supportive, so he's like, I'll still love you. And I mean, that's basically the question that I feel like a lot of people have conflated, is if I don't make X amount of money, am I still valuable? Am I still important? Do I still have a purpose on this life? Am I going to ever be something other than a failure? And again, those come down to when your identity is anchored in Christ and his love. It really does help, because your life is, your life is not meaningless. You know that you were here for a reason, and that there is something about God that only you can show other people, no matter how much of a loser the world might think you are. And I say that as somebody that's been tempted to think that more often than I ought to have.
Do you still get bothered, though, if there are pushback from people or potential collaborators, what have you, because of your Christian conservative background? Because I know that there are a lot of people now, especially more in the traditional legacy institutions, they feel that way, that certain people get in these institutions and they feel that people who have a different background, usually it's not always this, sometimes it's the opposite way, but they're more progressive, and they don't want any person who is conservative or Christian in the institution. Have you had experiences like that? Or does that not, or if it happens, you just don't care because you have all this backing?
I've learned not to care that much. I've learned that there are people who don't like it. There are people who don't like it when you call them out on certain things. there are just a lot of things that you see that are wrong, and it's, I'm probably not going to change anybody's mind unless they are open to the idea of having their mind changed. And I think that's a good kind of like, starting point for when you get into Twitter fights. There are a couple people that I've pushed back on just because, I like standing up for my friends if I can. I don't actively seek it out though either. Usually. I'll tell you an example of this. I have a lot of readers that are very loyal, and I've had a couple of people tell me, "I've read all your books. I love all your books except for," and I already know which one they're going to say. So
it's the pie book, isn't it? They don't like pie.
I don't like pie. I wrote that book because I was like, I hate pie. Let's write a book about it. But no, it's my, there's a book I have called, Till Human Voices Wake Us. And it goes back to my poetry days because I stole the line from, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. I really like T.S. Eliot poetry. He was a modernist. He lived about 100 years ago now, and he saw the onset of World War II. And he had a lot of really groundbreaking work in the modernist movement. He's called the father of modernism. And it's this breakdown of like, the neoclassic themes, and there's a lot more taboo things in there, and there's usually a lot of non-traditional usage of language in modernist poetry. Anyway, class dismissed, right? Anyway, he talks about like the line is until human voices wake us and we drown. He's talking about mermaids holding us up as they're like in the sea, and it's this very lovely picture. And no, I talk about the theme behind that book that I wrote is, if you had to pick between abortion and climate change, which one are you going to pick? And some people did not like.
Ooh, that's edgy. That's like it's like teenage edgelord stuff. Like,
well, and that's where yeah. I mean, they say cow farts cause climate change, so it's like, well, what if abortion causes climate change? What are you going to do? I would really love to have an honest conversation with a progressive on that, because it's like, yeah, I taught college for a while too, and I taught a research class, and I had a lot of people that were interested in global warming and climate change at the time. And if you look at a lot of the trends in the research, it's really interesting, some of the spin on it. So that's all I can say.
All right.
That's all I can say without you getting demonetized.
No, I appreciate that you took the time to speak with me today about these things. I find it interesting. Part of me is like, would I ever want to work on a book project? Would that be something that interests me? I just think creatives in general are interesting because they tend to have pretty varied backgrounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. You remind me of Stephanie Meyer. She is another stay-at-home Christian mom, and she made it big with her terrible, awful books of the Twilight series. You said that witchcraft as a topic is coming back. So,
well, I'll say this for Stephanie Meyer. I did not like the books when I first read them, but I've grown to appreciate them more in light of the fact that they will age better than the Disney Star Wars sequels. So I was a Star Wars girl growing up. I had tons of shirts. I have a lot of the EU. I have Barbies. Okay, I have Star Wars Barbies. And that was the wrong thing to make for people like me. So I tell my children there's only 3 Star Wars movies, and then there are 3 fan fiction ones. And then there are abominations.
I'm a little bit more open. I think the prequels have their time and place. So mine is more like 6 and maybe Rogue One, maybe.
I didn't like Rogue One, and I think this has I think it has to do with a lot of my disdain for modern portrayals of father-daughter relationships. I think women characters in general are they're hard to write well, and especially the better that they are, the harder it is to write them. one of the reasons I think there is a big problem with society in general is that there's such a youthful disdain for older people. And I was complaining to my one friend the other day. It's like, you know, I don't have a lot of like I don't have a lot of like mentors as far as different aspects of my life, and a lot of people I think look to me for those answers now. And like I said, I'm 30, you know. um, and it's like I feel bad, you know.
I disagree. I think you should feel good. My experience is we live in a very selfish age. And so people, especially in journalism, because we're on a sinking Titanic and everyone's playing musical chairs, if no one is standing up for other people. If it's like their best friend and they're already going to do well, they'll like say something about, that's only because, they think it'll be beneficial for them. Very rarely do you find a person that actually acts as a real mentor or provides advice, or, like if I have someone, they come to me and say, Peter, I need help finding a place for my story. I am always open and I am always willing to help people. And that I've been told many times that makes me very different, because that's not how it is. I think we live at a time where people aren't helping each other out like they used to. And so when you have people like you and you seem to set an example and you seem like a good person, that attracts other people who are looking for someone that might get in the wheelhouse. So I disagree. I think that is a total positive. I think we need more people who are willing to help each other.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just mean like there's only a certain limit that I'm good for, I think acknowledging limitations on that is good too. Like like out of all my books, I will say I only have one bestseller, and I have like I genre hop a lot, so people don't really know what to expect. So if I were to give you advice in the sense of like writing a book, I would say write something that if you want to make money off of it, write it in a way that it will make money. A lot of my books are passion projects. A lot of them are really great ideas that I just get too excited to wait for, like, do the marketing, learn how to do it correctly, like with Dizchord, which is my comic that came out today. I really wanted to write a really good father and son sort of superhero story. Like I said, it's set in Atlanta. The hero's got, like, he's a musical empath. These are all really good ideas, but like I know we're kind of in some superhero fatigue era. And it's like, I don't know if anybody's willing to take a chance on me or not. And I hope they are. You've spent your money on worse. Everybody's listening, you know it.
I don't think it's superhero fatigue necessarily, because I think it's more a fatigue of just poorly made superhero stuff. Because if there's a really good superhero project, people will gravitate to it still. It's just the projects that we've seen, especially coming out of Marvel or DC, they've been so half-baked that
the other side of it too, because I was thinking about this earlier, like what's the difference between my comic and other superhero stuff is I think my comic is better about bringing the conflict down to where you can understand it. I don't actually understand what Kang wants in the multiverse, and the multiverse itself is kind of more like a philosophical mess. Yeah, it's a philosophical quagmire because, like, some people just don't believe in it. And like how it fits into the Marvel world is strange. I mean, is he trying to curtail it to one timeline? I mean, does he want to destroy it completely? Is he the good guy or the bad guy? There's a lot more questions I think that they've done a very poor job of answering. So, and then with DC, I don't actually know what they're doing. So
I don't think DC knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, even in like Batman versus Superman and the Snyderverse, I don't think the themes connect well with the character arcs, and I think that's a problem. So my character tries to keep it on the ground. He's trying to find his dad's killer, trying to uphold his dad's legacy, become a man, that his parents would be proud of. So
cool.
Easy stuff.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show today, CJ. Can you please tell us, where can we find you? What's your Twitter? Where can they find your comics project?
Okay, well, the Twitter is right there. So, writer C.S. Johnson and csjohnson.me. So it's csjohnson.me. Talking about narcissism, you know. For what it's worth, I'm a reformed narcissist. So
Interesting.
I think after 30, life should have beaten you down enough to know that you're absolutely nobody in the grand scheme of the world.
Yep. True.
And if you can be happy being yourself, that's something that nobody could take away from you. But yeah, that's my Twitter. That's my Gab handle too. And then it's writer CS Johnson 1 on YouTube if you want to find me there. I have a lot of my audiobooks loading up that you can listen to for free. And I have a freebie book here and there too. And I have a coffee shop too, which I'll send you the link for that because they spelled it weird.
Okay. What's the name of your project that's on Kickstarter, right? What's the name? Where can people find that?
Okay, so the one on Kickstarter is Dizchord. It's Dizchord. And it's Atlanta's guardian angel of music.
Okay.
I actually introduced my daughter to Phantom of the Opera last week. So we've been having a lot of fun with that.
Oh, that'll be fun, except in a month from now, and she wants to play, wants to play that soundtrack for the 100th time. You're gonna be like, oh, why did I do this?
We're still on the Sound of Music. She let me, or she let me convince her, or no, I let her convince me to buy the Sound of Music soundtrack. So, and she's just in love with that too right now. So, I don't think Phantom will replace it, but it's a good musical sort of follow up, I guess.
All right, cool. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to watch or listen to CultureScape today. The show is sponsored by Young Voices and Bain Books Publishing. We appreciate all of you very much. Until next time, my friends, keep geeking out.